They dragged her into that courtroom like a criminal. The whispers followed her down the aisle, sharp as knives. A woman claiming to be a Navy SEAL. Impossible, they said. A fraud? Even the judge seemed ready to make an example of her. The prosecutor smiled, case files spread before him like a victory feast. Then she removed her jacket, and something caught the light. A silver star pinned beneath her lapel. Suddenly, everyone stopped breathing. No one had bothered to ask what she sacrificed for her country. They just assumed she was lying. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story moved you, please consider subscribing for more untold stories of extraordinary courage. The county courthouse buzzed with morning activity as Wren Atherton walked through the crowded hallway, escorted by a court officer. Her navy blazer and simple button-up shirt contrasted with her composed demeanor, a woman prepared for battle, though not the kind most expected. A subtle limp marked her gait, so slight most wouldn't notice. Whispers followed her, pointed fingers, judgmental glances. That's her, the woman claiming to be a SEAL. Pathetic. Disrespectful to real veterans. In the last row, a group of veterans in various service caps and pins watched with barely contained disgust. One spat into a paper cup. Prosecutor Farron arranged his documents with theatrical precision, occasionally glancing at Wren with a smirk that suggested he considered this case barely worth his talents. His assistant leaned in, whispered something, and they shared a knowing laugh. Judge Carlisle, his silver hair framing a weathered face that had seen decades of human drama unfold before his bench, called the court to order. Case number 47,329, Commonwealth versus Atherton. Charges of fraud and stolen valor. Farron approached, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. Your Honor, this is perhaps the most clear-cut case of stolen valor I've ever seen. Ms. Atherton has fabricated an impossible service record. Women simply cannot serve as Navy SEALs. It's physically impossible and against military policy. Throughout this, Wren remained silent, eyes forward. Only her attorney, Laszlo Montrose, beside her. Laszlo's rumpled appearance belied the sharp intelligence in his eyes. How does the defendant plead? Judge Carlisle asked. Not guilty, Your Honor, Wren said, her quiet voice carrying unexpected authority. Farron's opening statement was a masterclass in condescension. He displayed screenshots of VA benefits Wren had received, a community award citing her distinguished service, and testimony from a naval administrator claiming no record existed of her SEAL qualification. The defendant has spun an elaborate fantasy, he announced, claiming to have served in operations that, conveniently, she says were classified. She's exploited the very secrecy that protects our nation's most sensitive operations as a shield for her lies. In the gallery, several veterans scoffed loudly. One muttered, "Disgraceful." Throughout this barrage, Wren remained composed. Her attorney rarely objected, which seemed to puzzle Judge Carlisle. Farron paced before the jury box, his expensive suit catching the fluorescent lights. Ladies and gentlemen, stolen valor is not a victimless crime. When someone falsely claims military honors, they diminish the sacrifice of those who truly earned them. They steal something precious and irreplaceable from our heroes. He gestured toward Wren. The defendant sits before you today because she claimed an honor that cannot possibly be hers. Navy SEALs represent the pinnacle of military achievement. The training is legendarily difficult, designed to forge the toughest warriors on Earth. The defendant asks you to believe that she somehow secretly completed this training when no woman in history has done so. Wren's face remained impassive, but her hands tightened slightly on the table before her. The prosecution calls Commander Thaddeus Royce, Farron announced. A tall man in a crisp naval uniform approached the witness stand. Commander Royce carried himself with the unmistakable bearing of career military, his chest decorated with multiple rows of service ribbons. After being sworn in, Royce stated his credentials: 22 years of naval service, 15 overseeing aspects of SEAL qualification training, and current position as Training Evaluation Officer for Naval Special Warfare Command. Commander Royce, Farron began, in your professional capacity, have you ever encountered a female Navy SEAL? I have not, Royce replied firmly. Is it physically possible for a woman to complete SEAL training as it currently exists? Royce's answer came without hesitation. No. The standards were established based on operational requirements. The physical demands exceed what female physiology can typically achieve. So, when the defendant claims to have completed SEAL training and served in operations, what is your professional assessment of that claim? It is a fabrication, sir. There is no possible way. From her seat, Wren watched Royce impassively. If his testimony affected her, she showed no sign. Farron produced a document. Commander, I'm showing you what has been marked as Exhibit C, Ms. Atherton's VA benefits application. She lists her service as Naval Special Warfare, SEAL Team Classified. Have you ever heard of a classified SEAL team that might admit women? No, sir. While specific operations are classified, the existence of the teams themselves is not. There is no secret women's SEAL program. In the gallery, several veterans nodded in agreement. A man in a seal trident pin shook his head in disgust. When Laszlo rose for cross-examination, his approach was unexpected. He shuffled papers, adjusted his glasses, and asked in a conversational tone, Commander Royce, you've had an illustrious career. Congratulations. Thank you, Royce replied cautiously. Your security, clearance level is top secret, correct? Yes, with various compartmented access. But not all compartments, I imagine. Royce frowned slightly. No one has access to everything. Indeed, Laszlo nodded. Commander Royce, are you familiar with Special Warfare Task Force Epsilon? The courtroom grew quiet. Royce's confident demeanor faltered momentarily. That's classified information, sir? So it exists then? Laszlo pressed. I'm not at liberty to confirm or deny that. But if it did exist, you might not have access to information about it, correct? Objection, Farron interrupted. Calls for speculation. Sustained, Judge Carlyle ruled, but his gaze lingered on Wren with newfound curiosity. Laszlo nodded and returned to his seat. Wren whispered something to him, and he gave a slight shake of his head. As Royce stepped down, a small commotion occurred at the back of the courtroom. 2 uniformed naval officers entered and took seats in the last row. Their faces remained impassive, but their eyes fixed on the proceedings with unmistakable interest. Judge Carlyle noticed them too, his brow furrowing slightly before returning his attention to Farron. The prosecution calls Elijah Winters, Farron announced. A middle-aged man in a VA administrator's uniform approached the stand. After being sworn in, he confirmed his role in processing veteran benefits claims. Mr. Winters, did you process the defendant's application for VA benefits? I did. And what was unusual about it? Winters adjusted his glasses. Well, she claimed SEAL qualification, which immediately flagged in our system. When I attempted to verify her service record, I found inconsistencies. Her basic service record confirmed naval service, but there was no documentation of BUD/S completion or SEAL qualification. What did you do then? I followed protocol and referred the case for investigation. Falsifying military service to obtain benefits is fraud. Farron nodded solemnly. No further questions. When Laszlo approached for cross-examination, his demeanor remained casual. Mr. Winters, what security clearance do you hold? I have secret clearance. Not top secret. No, sir. So you wouldn't have access to classified service records beyond your clearance level? Winters shifted uncomfortably. Well, no, but there are protocols for verifying classified service. Which are? We submit inquiries to the appropriate authorities. And did you receive a response to your inquiry about Miss Atherton? Winters hesitated. Yes, it was inconclusive. Inconclusive, Laszlo repeated. Not a denial? Not explicitly, no. Yet you proceeded with fraud allegations? The burden of proof is on the claimant. Without confirmation, we had to treat it as unsubstantiated. Laszlo nodded thoughtfully. One last question. Did anyone from Naval Intelligence contact you regarding Ms. Atherton's case? Winters glanced toward the naval officers in the back row. Yes, yesterday. And what did they say? They asked for copies of all files related to her case. Thank you, Mr. Winters. No further questions. As the morning session continued, Farron called several more witnesses. A veterans group leader who had confronted Wren at a memorial ceremony. a military historian who testified about the history of SEAL training, and a female naval officer who described her own rejected application to BUD/S training. Throughout it all, Wren sat still and straight, her expression revealing nothing. Only the occasional glance toward the naval officers in the back suggested any connection to them. When the morning session ended, Judge Carlisle announced a 1-hour recess for lunch. As the courtroom began to empty, one of the naval officers approached the bench and handed the judge an envelope. Words were exchanged too quietly for others to hear, but the judge's expression grew serious as he nodded. Wren watched this exchange without surprise, as if she had been expecting it all along. When court reconvened after lunch, the atmosphere had shifted subtly. The naval officers sat straighter in their back row seats. Judge Carlisle's gaze lingered on Wren with new intensity, and even Farron seemed less theatrical, glancing occasionally at a note that had been delivered to him during the recess. "Before we continue," Judge Carlisle announced, "I need to see both attorneys in my chambers immediately. Ms. Atherton, you will join us as well." The courtroom buzzed with speculation as they filed out. In chambers, Judge Carlisle closed the door firmly behind them and took his seat behind the desk. "I received this during the recess," he said, holding up a sealed envelope bearing official naval insignia. "It's from the Office of Naval Intelligence concerning this case." Farron straightened his tie. "Your Honor, if I may, whatever is in that envelope doesn't change the facts of this case. The defendant has claimed service in a unit that doesn't exist." "I haven't opened it yet," Carlisle replied, "because I wanted to be clear about something first." He turned to Wren. "Ms. Atherton, I get the sense there's more to this case than is immediately apparent. Before I open this, I need to understand something. Are you prepared for what happens if I do?" Wren spoke directly for the first time beyond her plea. Her voice was quiet, but carried the unmistakable tone of command. "Your Honor, I never wanted any of this. I was content to live quietly. But now that we're here, yes, open it." The judge broke the seal and removed several pages. As he read, his expression changed from curiosity to shock. He looked up at Wren with new eyes. "I see," he said finally. "This changes matters considerably." Farron leaned forward. "Your Honor, may I ask what that document contains?" "You may not, at least not fully. It's classified at a level beyond this proceeding." Carlisle handed one page to Farron. "This portion, however, is cleared for your review. It confirms that certain aspects of Ms. Atherton's service record are classified under National Security Directive 5891. Farron scanned the page, his confident demeanor faltering. "This doesn't specifically confirm her SEAL status, Your Honor." "No, it doesn't," Carlisle agreed. "But it does establish that portions of her service record are classified beyond normal access. That creates reasonable doubt regarding your allegations." "We need clarification then," Farron insisted. "If someone from Naval Intelligence could testify to the specifics of her service." "That appears to be arranged," Carlisle said, reading further. "Captain Meridian from Naval Intelligence is prepared to testify under limited scope. We'll need to partially seal the courtroom." Wren spoke again. "Your Honor, if I may, there's a simpler way to proceed." All eyes turned to her. "I would like to take the stand." When they returned to the courtroom, Judge Carlisle addressed the gallery. "Due to matters of national security, portions of these proceedings will be sealed. All non-essential personnel and observers must leave the courtroom for the next witness testimony." Confusion and protest followed this announcement, but the court officers began clearing the room. The naval officers in the back remained seated, joined now by a third man in a dark suit, who carried a briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. Once the courtroom was secured, Wren was called to the stand. As she rose from her seat, she removed her blazer to hand to Laszlo. The movement caused her blouse to shift slightly, revealing something pinned to the inner lapel of her jacket. Judge Carlisle noticed it first, his eyes widening in recognition. "Ms. Atherton," he said slowly, "is that a silver star?" The courtroom fell silent. Farron looked confused, then disbelieving. The metal, partially hidden on the inner side of the lapel, where only Wren would know it was there, caught the light as Laszlo took the jacket. "Yes, Your Honor," she replied quietly. "For what action was it awarded?" "I'm not at liberty to discuss that fully in open court, sir." Judge Carlisle nodded. "I understand." He looked to the naval officers. Captain Meridian, please approach. The oldest of the naval officers came forward, carrying a document case. After being sworn in, he introduced himself as Captain James Meridian, Office of Naval Intelligence. Captain, can you verify the nature of Miss Atherton's service? I can, within constraints, Your Honor. Meridian opened his case and removed a folder. Lieutenant Commander Wren Atherton served under my command in a classified capacity from 2012 to 2019. The specifics of her training and operations remain classified, but I am authorized to confirm that she was indeed qualified as a naval special warfare operator. Farron rose. Your Honor, that's deliberately vague. Is he confirming she was a SEAL or not? Meridian turned to face Farron. The term Naval Special Warfare Operator is the official designation for what you're colloquially calling a SEAL. And yes, Lieutenant Commander Atherton completed all qualification requirements. But women aren't allowed in SEAL units, Farron protested. That's not entirely accurate, Meridian replied. While it's true that women were not formally admitted to SEAL training until recently, there have been classified exceptions for specific operational requirements. Task Force Epsilon was one such exception, established in 2011 for specialized operations where female operators provided tactical advantages. Judge Carlisle addressed Wren directly. Lieutenant Commander Atherton, I presume this is the unit Commander Royce was unable to discuss? Yes, Your Honor. The man with the handcuffed briefcase approached and spoke quietly to Captain Meridian, who nodded and turned back to the court. With the court's permission, I've been authorized to present additional documentation regarding Lieutenant Commander Atherton's service, including redacted mission reports and her award citations. Judge Carlisle agreed, and the documents were distributed to the judge, both attorneys, and entered into evidence. Farron's face grew increasingly pale as he reviewed the materials. The Silver Star citation, heavily redacted, revealed only fragments. Extraordinary heroism, enemy fire, extraction of hostages, despite severe injuries. A photograph showed Wren, years younger, in desert camouflage with her face partially obscured by tactical gear, standing alongside a group of similarly equipped operators. Their unit patches and identifying features were blurred. In light of this evidence, Judge Carlisle said, Mr. Farron, does the prosecution wish to continue? Farron slowly rose to his feet. Your Honor, in light of this evidence, the Commonwealth withdraws all charges immediately. Very well. Case dismissed. Judge Carlisle turned to Wren. Lieutenant Commander Atherton, you are free to go, and if I may say so personally, thank you for your service. As the courtroom began to reopen, Commander Royce approached Wren at the defense table. His face showed a complex mix of emotions, professional embarrassment foremost among them. Lieutenant Commander, he said stiffly, I owe you an apology. Wren looked up at him. No, you don't, she replied. You didn't know. That was the point. Still, I should have considered alternatives before making absolute statements. You testified to what you knew to be true, Wren said. I've spent my career in the shadows, Commander. Anonymity was part of the job. Captain Meridian joined them. And you did that job exceptionally well, Wren. The program wouldn't have succeeded without you. Wren's expression showed discomfort at the praise. The others deserve just as much credit. They do, Meridian agreed, but you were the first. You opened the door. As they spoke, the courtroom gradually refilled. The veterans who had shown such contempt earlier now watched with uncertainty, whispering among themselves. One, an older man with a Vietnam-era service cap, approached cautiously. Ma'am, he said, I think we owe you an apology too. Wren shook her head. Like I told the commander, you didn't know? We should have, he insisted. We judge without knowing the facts. That's not what brothers and sisters in arms should do. A young female veteran in army dress blues stood nearby, watching the exchange with a mix of awe and uncertainty. When Wren noticed her, the young woman straightened instinctively. Ma'am, she said, I just wanted to say thank you for everything. Wren's expression softened. What's your name? Specialist? Garcia, ma'am. Alicia Garcia. Well, Specialist Garcia, what are your plans in the service? I was considering Ranger School, now that it's open to women. But everyone says it's impossible. Wren smiled slightly. People say a lot of things are impossible. Sometimes they're wrong. As the crowd began to disperse, Laszlo gathered their materials. That went better than expected, he commented, though I'm still not clear on why you didn't tell me everything from the beginning. Force of habit, Wren replied. Operational security becomes second nature. Well, your secret's out now, at least partially. The press will want statements. Wren shook her head firmly. No press. I've never sought attention for my service, and I'm not starting now. You might not have a choice. This kind of story has a way of spreading. Outside the courthouse, a small crowd had gathered, including several reporters. Wren paused at the top of the steps, momentarily disconcerted by the attention. Lieutenant Commander Atherton, one called out, can you comment on the dismissed charges? Or on being one of the first female SEALs? Another added. Wren surveyed the crowd, her expression unreadable. Then she began to descend the steps, her slight limp more noticeable with each careful step. To her surprise, the veterans who had been in the courtroom now formed a line on either side of the steps. As she walked between them, they came to attention and saluted her one by one. She acknowledged them with quiet nods but seemed uncomfortable with the recognition. At the bottom of the steps, she found Captain Meridian waiting. They were bound to find out eventually, he said quietly. Maybe, she conceded, but I never did it for recognition. I know, he replied. That's precisely why you deserved it. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the courthouse steps as Wren navigated through the small crowd that had gathered. Camera flashes punctuated the air. Questions overlapped from eager reporters, but she maintained her composed silence. The veterans' impromptu honor guard had created a path for her, their salutes a stark contrast to the contempt they had shown just hours earlier. Laszlo appeared at her side, shielding her from the most persistent reporters. My car is around the corner, he said quietly. We can leave through the side entrance if you prefer. Wren shook her head. No need to hide now. As they reached the bottom of the steps, Commander Royce approached again. His earlier stiffness had softened into something more genuine. Lieutenant Commander Atherton, he said formally, extending his hand, I want to properly apologize for my testimony today. Had I known. As I said before, you have nothing to apologize for, Wren replied, taking his hand briefly. You testified to what you knew. That's all anyone can ask. Still, I feel I owe you more than that. Your service, your accomplishments, they deserve recognition. A slight frown crossed Wren's features. With respect, Commander, recognition was never the point. Task Force Epsilon existed because anonymity was operationally necessary. Nothing has changed in that regard. Captain Meridian joined them, having spoken briefly with the other naval officers. Technically, that's not entirely true, Wren. The Secretary of the Navy has authorized limited disclosure of Epsilon's existence, though specifics remain classified. Your identity as one of its members is now a matter of public record, thanks to these proceedings. Wren absorbed this with a slight tightening of her jaw. Was that really necessary, sir? It became necessary when these charges were filed, Meridian replied. We couldn't allow one of our best to be falsely accused of stolen valor. Some truths had to come to light. The young female specialist Garcia had lingered nearby, clearly gathering courage. She approached with respectful hesitation. Ma'am, she began, I know this is probably inappropriate, but I have to ask. How did you do it? How did you make it through when everyone said it was impossible? Wren regarded her thoughtfully. The question seemed to reach past her reflexive privacy, touching something deeper. After a moment, she answered. One evolution at a time, specialist. I never looked at the whole mountain, just the next step up, and I remembered why I was doing it, which was to prove that courage, commitment, and capability aren't limited by gender, that when lives are on the line, what matters is whether you can do the job, not what you look like while doing it. Wren paused, then added more quietly, and because someone told me I couldn't. Garcia nodded, absorbing this. Thank you, ma'am. That helps more than you know. As the crowd gradually dispersed, Wren declined several interview requests, stating only that she preferred to let the court records speak for themselves. When one persistent reporter asked about her Silver Star, she simply said, Many have earned far more and received far less recognition. Please focus on them. Laszlo watched this exchange with growing admiration. When they finally had a moment alone, Walking toward his car, he said, "You know, most people would milk this for all it's worth. Book deals, speaking engagements, maybe even a movie." Ren gave him a sidelong glance that made him laugh. "Right, clearly not your style, though it would pay better than your current job. What do you do these days, anyway?" "You never mentioned." "I teach wilderness survival courses," she replied, "and occasionally consult on security assessments, keeping a low profile, until today." They reached his car, but before getting in, Ren paused, looking back at the courthouse. The veterans who had formed her honor guard were dispersing now, some casting glances back in her direction. The young specialist was among them, walking with a new straightness to her posture. "Will you be okay?" Laszlo asked. "Once this story breaks wider, you might find your privacy hard to maintain." "I'll manage," Ren said. "I always have." Instead of going directly home, Ren asked Laszlo to drop her at Veterans Memorial Park. The sprawling grounds, with their monuments and reflecting pools, offered a quieter space for reflection. As the afternoon began to fade toward evening, the park was relatively empty, just a few visitors paying their respects at various memorials. Ren walked slowly along the pathways until she reached the newest addition, a black granite wall commemorating those lost in the more recent conflicts. Her fingers traced over the engraved names with familiarity, stopping at one in particular, Logan Hayes. She stood there in silence, her hand resting on the name, communion with the past written in the slight tensing of her shoulders. After some time, she became aware of someone approaching. Captain Meridian, who had apparently followed at a distance, now stood a respectful few paces away. In his hands, he held a small wooden box. "I thought I might find you here," he said quietly. "Keeping tabs on me, Captain. Old habits." He gestured to the name under her fingers. "Hayes was a good man, one of our best." "The best," Ren corrected softly. "He would have made it out if he hadn't come back for me." "He made his choice, Ren. The same choice you would have made. That doesn't make it easier." "No, it doesn't." Meridian moved closer, opening the wooden box. Inside, nestled in velvet, lay a trident insignia, the SEAL emblem. "I thought you might want this back. It's yours, after all." Ren looked at it for a long moment before shaking her head. "Keep it with the others, where it belongs. The others are being displayed now, you know. There's an exhibit at the Navy Museum about Task Force Epsilon, heavily redacted, of course, but acknowledging the program's existence and accomplishments." He closed the box. "Your place in that history should be recognized." "My place was doing the job, sir." That was enough. Meridian studied her, the fading light casting his features into shadow. "Was it? Is that why you've been living such a solitary life since you left the service? No family, few friends, a job that keeps you in the wilderness more often than not? Are you psychoanalyzing me now, Captain?" "Just making observations. You know, the program didn't end with your injury, it expanded. There are 27 women now who've completed the training, serving in various special operations roles. 3 have earned silver stars. 1 has a Navy Cross." This caught Ren's attention. "Who?" "Martinez, that mission in Somalia 2 years ago." A ghost of a smile touched Ren's lips. "Good for her. She always was stubborn." "Like someone else I know?" Meridian placed the box on the ledge beside the wall of names. "Think about it, Ren. Your story matters, not just for you, but for them. For the ones coming after." As Meridian departed, Ren remained by the wall. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the memorial grounds. She picked up the wooden box, running her thumb over its polished surface before opening it again to look at the trident inside. The emblem caught the last rays of sunlight, gleaming gold against the velvet. A family approached the memorial, a mother and father with a young daughter, perhaps 10 years old. The girl wore a junior ROTC uniform, pressed and proper, her posture military straight as she laid a small bouquet at the base of the wall. Ren watched them quietly, struck by the girl's solemn demeanor. When they turned to leave, the girl noticed Ren standing there. Her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of recognition crossing her features. She hesitated, then raised her hand in a formal salute. Ren returned it automatically. Military precision, ingrained too deeply to forget. The girl smiled before hurrying after her parents, glancing back once with unmistakable admiration. The encounter left Ren thoughtful. She closed the box containing the trident and slipped it into her pocket. The past couldn't be changed, but perhaps Meridian was right about its meaning for the future. As twilight deepened, Laszlo returned as promised, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He found Ren seated on a bench facing the memorial wall, her expression more at peace than he had seen it all day. "Holding up okay?" he asked, offering her one of the cups. "Getting there," she replied, accepting it gratefully. "You could sue for defamation, you know," he said, settling beside her. "It would be an easy win after today." Ren shook her head. "That's not why I fought this." "Then why?" She looked at the names on the memorial wall. "For them. For the ones who didn't come back, and for the ones who will come after." She paused. "Some battles you fight not to win, but to show they can be fought at all." They sat in companionable silence as the first stars appeared above. Other visitors had departed, leaving the memorial grounds quiet except for the soft splash of the fountain nearby. "What will you do now?" Laszlo finally asked. "Your privacy is compromised. Your story will be out there whether you want it to be or not." Ren considered this, turning the coffee cup in her hands. "Adapt and overcome," she said, echoing an old military mantra. "Maybe it's time to stop hiding. Not for recognition, but for truth." "What kind of truth?" "That capability isn't defined by gender. That service comes in many forms. That some battles are fought in silence but are no less significant." She glanced at him. "Maybe I will write that book after all. Not about me, but about all of us in Task Force Epsilon. The real story, as much as can be told." Laszlo nodded, understanding. "I know a good publisher when you're ready." As night settled fully over the memorial, they rose to leave. At the edge of the wall, Ren paused one last time, her fingers brushing over Hayes' name. Then she reached into her pocket and withdrew the Silver Star medal she had worn hidden for so long. With deliberate care, she placed it at the base of the wall, beneath his name. "Their stories matter," she whispered, "even the ones that can never fully be told." As they walked away, Ren straightened her shoulders, her usual composure settling back into place. But something had shifted. The burden of secrecy had lightened, replaced by a different kind of responsibility, to bear witness not just to her own story, but to all those who had served in silence. In the distance, the young girl in the junior ROTC uniform watched from her parents' car, her face pressed against the window. Ren raised her hand in a small salute. A torch silently passed to the next generation. The girl smiled, returning the gesture with perfect form. Some battles were fought to be won. Others were fought to ensure that those who came after would have the chance to fight them at all. As Ren drove away from the memorial, she understood that her battle had always been of the second kind, and perhaps, in its own quiet way, it had finally been won.